As our calendars flipped to March, we figured it was time to flip to a new series that would lead us into Easter. And as we're in March, we all know that March is supposed to come in like a lion and go out like a lamb. And yesterday we experienced a microcosm of that in reverse when it started in the 40s and ended in the teens. And it went out like a lion. That was kind of cool. But be of good cheer, 2 weeks from now, we got spring. It's coming. And so for spring and for this march into Easter, we wanted to do this series called Unlikely Redemption. And it's using a word that is not readily understood. Maybe we don't talk a lot about it, but it is actually not just a Bible word or a biblical concept. The idea of redemption is actually something that you might be very familiar with. So as we talk about this unlikely redemption, we just need to know that there is a God who redeems unlikely people and unlikely situations. Now you might be glad about that, or you might be saying, but what does redemption mean? So I have here in my fingers a wonderful 7 Brew coupon. Anyone like 7 Brew? Okay. And in this, some of you are going to charge the stage to get it from me. You can have it. That's okay. But it's good for a free drink any size, all right? But what is, like most coupons, it says on the bottom, no cash value. Okay, so this is a worthless piece of paper unless I redeem it. And in that moment at 7 Brew, when I redeem this, it has value, about $4.50 worth. Suddenly, this no cash value piece of paper becomes worth something upon redemption. A lot of us think that we're like this piece of paper. We don't have a lot of value. There are others who are more gifted than us. There are others who don't have as bad of a past as us or who have the struggles we have. And we struggle with our value and our worth. You need to know that while you may feel you have no cash value, you have a God who knows how to redeem something that seems worthless. And that's what we look at today. And I can just say from personal experience, I know there's a God out there who can redeem unlikely people because he has done it for me. And if God can redeem me, if he can turn me into something, he can do that for anyone. I've not just seen God do that with my life. I've seen him do that in situations in my life. I've seen him take situations where it felt impossible or hopeless, or I felt trapped. And God has redeemed them and used them for good when I thought they had no value and I didn't understand them. Have I ever told you about the time when a local church tried to arrest me? I can't believe I've never told you this. You ready for a little true story with Justin time? Okay, so back when I was in Bible college, every day on the way to class, I passed a Unitarian Universalist church. And to put it simply, that simply means they don't believe the Bible. Okay? They believe that everyone's born good and everyone goes to heaven. That's their belief. So I was very curious. I'm studying to be a pastor. I want to know what other churches believe and what they teach. So I went to that church on a Sunday and just kind of listened. And I listened as the preacher didn't use the Bible. And that was interesting. That was a nice little talk. And then the songs were about the environment. It was fascinating. I had never sung before to the environment. And I'm just like, wow, that was interesting. And then in the foyer, it was the craziest thing I'd ever experienced. There was a religion buffet in the foyer. And at the religion buffet were the views of all the different world religions, and it was there so the kids in the church could pick and choose the parts of religions they wanted and create their own religion, their own faith. I'm not making this up, okay? So crazy. I'm like, interesting. So I continue to drive by it every day to class, and one day I'm driving by and I see out by the road a giant sign that says their next sermon is going to be on the topic of homosexuality. I'm like, oh, that'll be interesting. I wonder what you talk about and how you teach on something when you don't use the Bible. I was curious. So I wasn't free to go that Sunday, but I did stop in and I ordered the CD, because this was before the days of podcasts and all that, right? Way in the olden days. So they told me when the CD would be ready for pickup. So When the CD was ready for pickup, on my way to class one day, I stopped to pick up the CD of that sermon on that issue. And they told me, the CD's ready, but you can't take it with you. Come here and we'll show you. So I'm like, I can't take it with me? So they took me into a room and closed the door, and they said, we'll let you stay in this room and listen to it. I said, I can't. I have to go to class. And they said, well, you need to wait here. And I said, well, I can't wait here. And they said, yeah, you need to wait. The police are on the way. I am telling you what, my heart never jumped that fast in my life. I'm like, what just happened? So I'm like, I have to go. I don't know what's going on right now. I have to get to class. So I went to the front door and I looked. They had parked their cars in a circle around my car and blocked me in. And they said, the police will be here soon. So I'm like freaking out, like, what just happened? I did not know it was a crime to order a CD from a church, but I'm learning things. So they begin talking. I'm just like, can you tell me, like, why'd you call the police? Why are you arresting me? What did I do? And they said, well, we were vandalized recently with graffiti. And I said, can I see it? And they showed it to me, and I didn't even understand the words that was on the graffiti, and they were slurs, kind of anti-gay slurs, that kind of thing. And I'm like, I don't even know what those words mean, first of all. Second of all, I can't draw to save my life. I can't even make a stick figure that people know is a stick figure. Think you got the wrong guy. Anyhow, by the time the police get there and they ask me a couple questions, they realize I was being falsely accused and illegally detained. And they said, guys, move the cars and let this kid go to class. So I happily went to class, and that was the day a local church almost arrested me. Now, not long after that, I got a call from the police department, and they had questions about the vandalism. And I was so confused as they were asking me questions. I'm like, well, why are you calling me? And they said, well, because your name is on the witness list. Oh, that's a step up. I thought I was on the suspect list. That officer had quickly discerned I was not guilty and had switched my name on his record from the suspect list to the witness list, and he redeemed my reputation. Now, they caught the guy. It was a member of their own church who was disgruntled with the direction they were going. But in that moment, as I hung up the phone with the police department, I thought, that's kind of cool. I went from a suspect to a witness by doing nothing other than a friendly officer who knew that I was innocent, and he redeemed my reputation. See, it's a weird story, I know, and I don't think it'll ever happen again, I hope. But we have a God who can take the moments of our life that make no sense. You ever been there? Not police called on you at a church, but you ever been there where something happened and it makes no sense and you feel trapped? You feel hopeless, you feel confused. God takes those very moments and he can turn them into something valuable. And more than that, he can take those moments and he can do something good within us. Today we look at a guy that learned how to trust God when life made absolutely no sense. So if you'll turn with me in your copy of the scripture, or you can use the chair Bible if you want, we're going to look at Genesis chapter 6. And I'm going to use the New Living Translation, NLT, and feel free to tap to that if you have an electronic Bible. If you don't have a Bible or you'd like a new one, take the one in the chair. That's our gift to you. We love giving away Bibles that are easy to read to invest in your faith. And if you have a friend who wants a Bible, take it with you, and we won't call the cops on them. Genesis chapter 6. And welcome, by the way, to our online friends. We're glad you're joining us here in Green today. And I know some of our church family, they're shut in for different reasons too, and they join us virtually. So, man, we love you guys. We miss you. We're praying for you. Genesis chapter 6. Let me give you a little context before we jump into chapter 6. So Genesis is the story of the beginning of humanity, the genesis of humans. Chapter 1 and 2 are pretty awesome parts of the story. It's God's creation. Chapter 3 is the bad part of the story. Human corruption ruins God's creation. And then chapters 4 and 5 kind of gives a list of the generations from Adam to Noah. And what we see when we get to chapter 6, the title of chapter 6 in my translation is 4 words, and it might be in yours. It says, "A world gone wrong." And that's exactly what had happened. The human story wasn't turning out too well, right? God made a perfect world, put humans in it to enjoy it, walked with them together each day in the evening, and then human corruption and sin ruined that. And then it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Chapter 6, verse 5 is where we'll pick up. It said, "The Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth." Now let me ask you, do you think God feels that way when he looks at the earth today? Do you think God looks at the earth and he's like, you know what? Humans are doing pretty good. I kind of like what I see. No, the Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and he saw, this is a crazy statement, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. That is a crazy statement. That is such an indictment on us as humans. Unlike my friends at that Unitarian Universalist church that think humans are good by nature, we believe that humans are corrupted by nature, that we're sinful, that we're bent away from God, that we struggle with rebellion and sin by default. And God looks down at humans and he says everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. And then you get another crazy statement, verse 6. "So the Lord was sorry he had ever made them and put them on the earth. It broke his heart." Okay, now this isn't saying that if God could go back and do it again, he would do it differently. What it is saying is he felt a strong emotional response when he looked down at people. God is a very emotional being, and I know that's a weird concept to think of. We think of God as kind of stoic, perhaps unmovable, but he is an emotional being. It's why we're emotional. He created us in his image. And God is literally pulled with this deep regret and sadness. He's sorry that he made humans. And he says, "I will," verse 7, "I will wipe this human race I've created from the face of the earth. I can't put up with it anymore. They have corrupted my creation. Yes, I will destroy every living thing, all the people, the large animals, the small animals that scurry along the ground, even the birds of the sky. I am sorry I ever made them." So you just need to understand the way that God operates. He created perfection. Humans ruin that perfection, and there's consequences to our rebellion against God. There just are. We might think God is a Santa. He's the big guy in the sky, and he's love, and he is love, but he's also justice, and he's also perfection. And he can't just allow things to keep going morally south and turn away, close his eyes, and act like it's not happening. So God said, "I will take action. I'm going to bleach the earth, and I'm going to start over. It's time for a reset. This has gone so wrong and so bad. I need to bleach it and start over." Okay, verse 8. This verse is a game changer. It says, it's a very short sentence, but what's it say? Noah found favor with the Lord. If verse 8 wasn't there, I don't know what would have happened. There was one guy on the face of the earth that caught God's eye, that caught God's attention, and that got God's favor. One guy. You ever feel alone? No one was more alone than Noah. One guy. Would you say at this point that redemption seems pretty unlikely? Yeah, because what's God going to do if he saves one guy? The human race is still over after that one guy dies. So, verse 9, this is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, the only blameless person living on earth at the time. Now, blameless there doesn't mean he hadn't done anything wrong. It means he had a good reputation and could not be accused of something that would stick. He was a blameless person, the only blameless person living on earth at the time. And this is fascinating, he walked in close fellowship with God. What did God do with Adam and Eve in the garden before corruption? He walked with them. What does God want to do with the people he's created, the crown jewel of his creation? He wants to walk and talk with us. He wants a relationship with us. This is why people get confused about religion and think religion is this list of rules of do's and don'ts to get to heaven. God's like, no, it's not. I want a relationship with you. Religion says do this and don't do that. Relationship says done. Come in and enjoy a relationship with me. And that's what Noah had with God. He had a close relationship, close fellowship with God. Noah was the father of 3 sons who were poorly named Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Poor Ham. Now, here's what's interesting. Noah's there, the only guy on earth who's blameless. No indication that his sons are. No indication that his wife is. It's Noah who has a tight walk, tight relationship with God. Now, Noah's dad had lived long enough to have personally known Adam, the first human. They had pretty long lifespans back then. So Noah's dad would have told him stories about Eden, about Adam, about Eve. And yet Noah had seen, even in his lifetime, the slide of humanity away from God. God was sickened by what he saw. You have to wonder, are humans even worth redeeming? Verse 11. Now God saw that the earth had become corrupt. When you look out at the world, do you see corruption at all? Of course we do, right? It was corrupt and was filled with, this is really interesting, was filled with violence. I think that's fascinating. One of the main reasons that God had to destroy the world in the days of Noah was because of violence. Our culture, even the church, entertains itself by violence, glamorizes violence. Violence isn't that big of a deal to us, morally speaking. And yet it was one of the main deals, like God said, enough. The earth was filled with violence, for God observed all this corruption in the world, for everyone on earth was corrupt. So God said to Noah, I have decided to destroy all living creatures, for they have filled the earth with violence. Yes, I will wipe them all out along with the earth. Okay, that wasn't a good start to the conversation, and Noah's probably thinking, whoo, why are you telling me this? You're about to send a global deluge that's going to wipe out every living thing. Thank you for the heads up, but I would have loved to have not known this if I'm about to drown with my family. And God says this, verse 14, build a large boat from cypress wood and waterproof it with tar inside and out. Then construct decks and stalls throughout its interior. Make the boat 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Okay, so you get the dimensions of it and realize this isn't a boat. You know, sometimes you see kids' little Noah's Ark things, you think it's a little boat. This is a ship, like a cargo ship size. This was over 1.5 million cubic feet of space. This was enormous. Leave an 18-inch opening below the roof all the way around the boat. Ventilation. God gives them very specific instructions that were advanced for the time for shipbuilding. Put the door on the side. Notice it says not a door, but the door. And build 3 decks inside the boat, lower, middle, and upper. Look, I'm about to cover the earth with a flood that will destroy every living thing that breathes. Everything on earth will die. God gives this one guy instructions to build a cargo ship that would be a place of salvation, a place of rescue for all of those he had chosen to redeem from corruption. Now, what's interesting is when he calls him to coat the ship with tar, with pitch, that would waterproof it. It would keep it from taking on water, and water would be that sign of God's judgment and bleaching of the earth. But the tar and the pitch would waterproof that wooden ship. And then there would be a door, one door on that ship, and only those who went in that door would be saved. What Noah would find out later is that there was no way to close the door. God designed it so that when it was the day for the flood to come, those who were ready to follow and obey him would go in that one door, and then guess who would close it? God closed it from the outside. That was the one path of redemption, of salvation. What's interesting is even today, there is only one door of salvation, and his name is Jesus. You can sing to the environment all you want. The environment can't save you. Right? You can be a good person. You can help people. You can get baptized till the pollywogs know your social security number. But that can't save you. Unless you go through the door of Jesus, you cannot find redemption and rescue. Jesus is the only way. Now, it's funny that we would get considered, we would get attacked for being narrow-minded for saying that. Right? It's narrow-minded to say there's only one way to heaven. But listen, if you're in a crowded theater and a fire breaks out and you start telling people, don't go that way, go this way, this is the exit. Is that narrow-minded to tell them where the exit is? No, it's gracious, it's loving, it's kind. And for those of us who know Jesus and point him out as the only way, it is kind to tell people that there is no other way. There is no other way. It's not harsh, it's not rude. It is the most loving thing you can do. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be well received. It certainly wasn't for Noah. I want you to think about the instructions that God gave him. Let's look a little bit more at the instructions. Verse 18, I will confirm my covenant with you, so enter the boat, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring a pair of every kind of animal, a male and female, into the boat with you to keep them alive during the flood. Pairs of every kind of bird and every kind of animal and every kind of small animal that scurries along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. And be sure to take on board enough food for your family and for all the animals. Now, today out in Kentucky, there is a life-size model, scale model. It's not scaled, it's 1-to-1, life-size version of Noah's Ark. Anyone ever been to the Ark Encounter? If those of you who haven't, put it on your list. It is crazy amazing to see the size and the scale of what Noah would have had to build. Now, he couldn't have done it alone. He would have had to hire a bunch of people. And in his day, there were iron tools and bronze tools. And so they knew how to build things. But here's the challenge of where Noah was building this. He was building this in ancient Mesopotamia, where there was no large body of water anywhere in sight. Basically, it was a wilderness/desert. Could you imagine God telling you to build a ship that doesn't move in a wilderness or in a desert? You know what your neighbors would start to think of you, right? They would do their best to call the number and have you committed. Now, add to that another crazy thing is the indication from Scripture is that it hadn't ever rained. The ground was watered through dew. Rain was not yet a thing. So not only is there no large body of water nearby, there's no possibility of flooding because there's no rain. And here's a guy out in his property building a cargo ship. Woo! You can only imagine the guy's reputation would have been toast. And you imagine him going out to hire people? Hey, I need you for a construction project. All right, what are we building? A boat. A what? A ship. A what? What are you offering to pay us? Better be good pay if you want us to build this boat in this wilderness. So here's what's crazy, verse 22. This verse is amazing to me. After what God asked him to do and what God told him, so Noah did everything exactly as God commanded him. Do you think that took just a little bit of trust? Just a little bit of faith? Now here's the deal. This construction project was between 50 to 100 years old, based on calculations. 50 to 100 years long for this construction project. This was a long ordeal. I can't imagine working on something that's that embarrassing, that's that large. You would have seen it for miles away, and yet this guy does exactly what God tells him to do. Now, one other thing I want you to know about Noah is he didn't do it with an attitude of, This is for me and my family. Screw all of you. You're all picking on me. You're all going to get swept away in this. You know what Noah did during that construction period? We're actually told in the New Testament, 2 Peter 2:5, Noah warned the world of God's righteous judgment. Noah was telling them, hey guys, I know this doesn't seem possible, but there's a flood coming. And I know it seems odd and unlikely, but this here ship in the wilderness is the only redemption. It's the only place of rescue. Why don't you join my family and I? We've got all kinds of room, we've got all kinds of food, and we have more pets than you can possibly imagine. You're gonna love it. Noah warned the world of God's right. He wasn't condemning them. He wasn't being harsh. He was just warning them, guys, it's gonna happen and there's room. So God protected Noah when he destroyed the world of ungodly people with a vast flood. Now, in verse 9 of 2 Peter 2, it says, so you see, the Lord knows how to rescue godly people from their trials, even while keeping the wicked under punishment until the day of final judgment. So this is something you and I might know, but we need to remind ourselves. The Lord knows how to rescue godly people. The Lord knows how to rescue his kids. When you feel like you are in a hopeless situation, whether it's a diagnosis of yourself or a loved one, whether it's a situation at work that you think is exactly impossible, you're backed into a corner, whether it's a relational break and you just feel like this is hopeless, my friend, you have a God who knows how to rescue his people. And he's proven it over and over through history. He can rescue the most unlikely people in the most unlikely situations. He's simply looking for a person who will trust him. And he found that in Noah. Now, here's what's crazy. God makes this promise to Noah. Chapter 9, verse 12. This is after the flood came, after God rescued his family and him. God makes this promise to Noah. He steps off the ark, he makes an altar, he gives God a sacrifice, and he worships God, he thanks God. And then God said to Noah, verse 12 of chapter 9, God said, I'm giving you a sign of my covenant with you and with all living creatures for all generations to come. A sign is something it communicates information. It's more important than the thing it's pointing to, right? So a sign this way to the Statue of Liberty. The sign is fairly insignificant, but it's pointing you to something that's very significant. So what's the sign that's going to be for all generations that God places as a reminder of this promise to never again flood the world, to never again do what he did in Noah's day? Here's the sign, verse 13. I have placed my what in the clouds? My rainbow in the clouds. It is the sign of my covenant with you and with all the earth. When I send clouds over the earth and the rainbow will appear in the clouds, and I will remember my covenant with you and with all living creatures. Never again will the flood waters destroy all life. So this is crazy. God says the reminder's two ways. The reminder's two ways. So this bow that he's put in the sky, this rainbow, is going to remind him every time he sees it when it's raining, right? That's when a rainbow comes out, when it's raining, and you notice towards the end of the rain, the rainbow pops. It's God reminding himself to turn off the spigot. I promised I wouldn't do this again. I promised. But here's what's interesting. In your translation, it might say rainbow. That's not the Hebrew word. The Hebrew word is bow. Why did God use the term for a military weapon? Because that's what it was in the ancient world. The bow was what an archer would use to hunt and to fight in battle. This is a bow that is pointing in a certain direction. So the bow was a sign of judgment, and God, in anger, in justice, wiped out the earth. And now he's putting the bow there, this weapon, as this reminder, don't do it again, but the bow is aimed up at the heart of heaven. God's saying the next judgment is going to hit me. I will pour out my judgment not on the earth. I will pour out my judgment on my own son. And every time you look at the rainbow, it is a reminder that the judgment that you and I deserve for our evil and corruption and wickedness was instead aimed at and shot at the heart of God's Son, Jesus Christ. God literally took his own judgment on himself. The bow of heaven. So let's just be really clear here as we think about Noah. Because you might say, okay, Noah had the favor of God. Noah was a blameless guy. Does that mean that Noah was kind of squeaky clean and perfect? Because if that's the standard, I'm in trouble. I don't know about you. I'm in trouble. And here's what God says. Psalm 14:2. The Lord looks down from heaven on the entire human race. So this word entire has a tricky meaning. It means entire. All. The entire human race. He looks to see if anyone is truly wise, if anyone seeks God. Now remember, there are all kinds of groups and even churches that teach that everyone is good. Well, God says the opposite. He says, but no, all, another tricky word in Hebrew, all means all, have turned away. All have become corrupt. No one does good, not a single one. So if you are counting on your goodness to bring you redemption, it's not a valid thing to count on. Because God looks down and he sees the real us. He knows our hearts. He knows our imagination. He knows that our imaginations are really messed up. We invent new ways to do evil. No one, not even one, does good. So you say, well, what about Noah? Wasn't Noah like this squeaky clean, perfect person? Can I tell you what Noah did after the flood? Noah planted a vineyard, and he drank so much from his vineyard, he got drunk and naked. And then got really ashamed. There was some major family issues after that because of what happened in that incident. It's this tragic story of Noah, where after God bleaches the earth and starts over, Noah's the first one to mess up. Noah, the one guy who had the close relationship with God, is the first one to blow it. You're like, didn't you hear your dad talk about Adam? You blew it. You blew it. But here's the thing. God didn't rescue Noah because he was perfect. God rescued Noah because he was perfect. Check this out. Hebrews 11, and it's impossible to please God without perfection? No, without faith. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists. That's the starting point. Believe God exists and that he rewards those who sincerely seek him. This is cool. It was by faith that Noah built a large boat to save his family from the flood. He obeyed God, who warned him about things that had never happened before. If you follow Jesus and if you believe the Bible, you know that at the end of the Bible are some prophecies that talk about the Son of God, Jesus, coming back to earth someday. Does anyone else believe that's true? Okay, now that's cool and that takes faith, but listen, it's already happened before. He's already come. The entire world knows it. 3 billion out of 8 billion people claim to follow this Jewish carpenter who went to the Middle East and never left this tiny strip of land his entire life. We have faith, but it's based on something that's already happened. We're like, he already came, he's coming back. I can believe that. Noah had nothing to base his faith on. No rain, no large body of water, and he's building a ship in the wilderness. It was purely an act of faith that led him to trust God, and it made no sense. It made absolutely no sense. By his faith, Noah condemned the rest of the world, and he received the righteousness, right? Was Noah righteous? Yes, and it came by faith. Here's the really cool part about righteousness. That means right standing with God. Noah was a good and blameless guy who was just as messed up as we are. You know, there's people that say, I'm not going to church. It's filled with hypocrites. You know how I know that's wrong? And that's a lie? because there's always room for one more. We're all messed up. We're all messed up. You turn to the person next to you and say, you're messed up. Didn't that feel good? You've been wanting to say that for a while, haven't you? Listen, when we receive the righteousness of God, it is the righteousness of God being given to us. When God looked down at Noah, who had a close relationship with him, he had forgiven him of his personal sin and had clothed him in the perfection of heaven. When God looks down at us and is going to rescue and redeem us, it is not because of us, it is because of God's image in us and the righteousness of his Son that covers us. It says one day when we get to the other side and we get to heaven, we are given new clothes, robes, white robes reflecting the perfection of Jesus that will now cover us and our shame forever. That is not my goodness. That is God's goodness. And Noah was able to access that by faith. So today, what's God up to? Well, he's looking for people who will trust him even when it doesn't make sense to you. I'm guessing that you've got a situation or relationship in your life right now that makes no sense to you. And if you don't, cool, just wait a little while. Will you trust God even though it makes no sense? Awesome. I heard a yes. That is awesome. Will you trust God even when it doesn't make sense? Sometimes it's a forgiveness thing. I can't forgive because I'll be letting them off the hook and they deserve this, that, and the other thing. Well, God says to forgive. Will you trust that God knows how to take care of that other person? Will you trust him even though that doesn't make sense? It doesn't compute. Some of you, it's like, well, I'm in school and I know it's just easier to cut some corners or to not do my best or to cheat. Yeah, it is easier. It's harder to work your butt off and do the right thing. Will you trust God even when those around you aren't, when it doesn't make sense? Will you be a Noah in your classroom, in your school? Will you be the one that God looks at and says, I can trust them? They have faith. They are choosing to walk in blamelessness. Is it a situation at work and you're like, this is irredeemable? Don't forget God. In that scenario that looks hopeless or impossible and you're stuck, don't forget God. You have a God who redeems things that have no cash value. You have a God who takes situations and people that have no value in and of themselves, and when they get in his hands, they're worth something. Here's what God does. The eyes of the Lord search the whole earth in order to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. This, my friends, is the story of Noah. God just was looking over the whole world saying, is there anyone? Is there anyone who loves me? Is there anyone who trusts me? And he sees Noah. He says, oh yeah, Noah, my man. I can trust you to build a ship in the wilderness where there is no water and no rain. I can trust you to redeem the human race because I know you'll obey me. When I tell you something that makes no sense, I know you are the only person on earth who will tell me yes. And today, thousands of years later, God is still scanning the earth, looking for someone that he can trust. When God tells you something, does he get a yes? That's a powerful question. I want to be God's yes man. I want God to know he can ask me anything and he will get a yes. I don't want to say that too loud because I'm scared what he's going to ask me. But I want to have that kind of faith. I want to get there. I want to get to a place where I know, God, you can tell me to do anything or not do anything, to say anything or not say anything, and you can count on a yes from me. And I'm just going to do it by faith, not because I understand it, not because it makes sense. And if you ask me to go make a ship in Kansas, I'm going to struggle with that. But God, what do you want me to do? I'll listen and I'll do it. And God, through history, has taken the most unlikely people to accomplish the most unlikely acts of redemption. He used one messed up man who had a close relationship with him and was committed to him to redeem the entire human race. And now we don't look to Noah for our salvation. We look to the one man who was to come, his name, Jesus. And through him comes the redemption of the whole human race. And he is the only door of salvation. And the bow that points to heaven is the arrow that struck the heart of God. Jesus took our punishment. We get salvation through Jesus. And now God is looking for people who will follow him with all their heart. Are you in? Would you bow with me? I want to read for you the lyrics of a pretty cool song. You might have heard this song on the radio. It's called Build a Boat. I love this song. But it's about Noah. And it says this at the end of the song. It says, I will build a boat in the sand where they say it never rains. I will stand up in faith. I'll do anything it takes. With your wind in my sail, your love never fails or fades. I'll build a boat in the desert place. And when the flood and the water starts to rise, yeah, I'll ride the storm because I've got you by my side. With your wind in my sails, your love never fails or fades. I'll build a boat, so let it rain. My friend, God is looking across the world like he was in the days of Noah. He is looking for those whose hearts are fully committed to him. Why? Because he wants to strengthen them. He wants to show himself strong on their behalf. As he glances across the world, will his eyes stop on you? Not because of your goodness, not because of your past, but because of your faith. Because you're willing to trust him no matter what. There's a song that we're going to end with in a moment called My Feet Are on the Rock. And it says, I can see the clouds roll in and I can feel the winds, they try to shake me. I will not be moved. My feet are on the rock. I can feel the waters rise. I can hear the howling lies that haunt me. Fear won't hold me now. My feet are on the rock. When I feel my hope about to break. Some of you are there right now. You're hanging by a thread. When I feel my hope about to break, I will cling to your unchanging grace. Let the waters come and the earth give way. I'll be dancing in the rain. My feet are on the rock. My friend, if your feet are firmly on Jesus Christ, they are on the rock. And nothing this world throws at you will drown you. You have a Father in heaven who sees you, who loves you, who has the power to redeem you. Will you trust him? Will you be fully committed to him? The eyes of the Lord scan across the whole earth, looking to show himself strong on behalf of those who are fully committed to him. God, help us to be your yes person. Teach us what it means to fully follow you. In Jesus' name, amen.